Hello. Happy Monday, everyone. I am just getting the group pulled up here on my phone so that I can monitor for comments. I hope you all have had a wonderful weekend and start to your week. I am back here for day 4 of our Building Emotional Resiliency in Postpartum, the 6 Losses of Postpartum series. So, just a brief introduction. My name is Jessie Sletton, and I am a postpartum empowerment coach. I help birth givers exchange surviving for thriving in the perinatal time frame. And we do this by working together on holistic support plans that really cover a wide variety of emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental needs in the postpartum time frame specifically. And a lot of those are centered on nourishment for you and for your little one, including infant feeding. I am a certified lactation counselor, so that is one of the benefits of working with me one-on-one, is you get access to my wealth of knowledge when it comes to lactation and infant feeding in general. And it also includes nourishment for you as a certified postpartum nutrition coach. I work with you one-on-one on creating a very feasible and deeply nourishing way to approach your food in postpartum time that can really help replenish your depleted nutrients, really help support your milk supply if that's the way in which you're choosing to feed your little one, and really help with the healing process in general. All of that is so tied to the way we fuel and feed our bodies in postpartum. So that's another aspect of the postpartum planning that I do with my clients. And then the last thing that we do is we really focus on this emotional resiliency piece. I find that it's so easy for us to start planning around the tactile things, the tangible things that are easy for us to think about, how we're going to feed baby, what type of products we want to use when it comes to diapering, all these things that are very tangible. But not only do we often not really think about our own transition into parenthood, but when we do, it is more of these tactile things. And so when we focus on the emotional side and how really so much changes within our own experience, within our minds, within our bodies, all of these things change and evolve so much in the postpartum time frame. And when we really focus in on supporting that journey, we see a huge impact in our own mental health, in our own way that we show up for our family and how we bond with our baby. All of these things are affected by how well supported we are in our emotional and mental journeys into parenthood. And so that's a little bit about what we have been talking about over the last 3 days, and now for day 4 in this special series that I wanted to bring into this space, into this group, where you can really learn about this very normal experience of loss in the postpartum time frame. And we're not talking again about more of the literal losses that can happen. We're talking more about the emotional experience that can happen in postpartum. And I wanted to just make sure that my comments are rolling on my phone, because if you do have questions or comments, I'm going to be monitoring for that over here on my phones. If you see me looking over there, that's what I'm doing. And feel free to jump in. I want this to be a space where you can come and ask your questions, maybe share your stories, share your experiences. Last week we talked about the loss of voice that can happen in the postpartum time frame, where it's very common for us to feel like our stories don't have a safe place to be told. And so often, when we do try to bring our stories and our experiences to others around us, often we're met with sympathetic responses versus that empathetic response, where we're really looking for that validation to be seen and heard in our experience, instead of the more of the like, well, at least baby's healthy, or, yeah, I understand, I went through X, Y, and Z, and kind of just the whole the whole thing is breezed over with what you're experiencing currently. So sometimes that can happen with that loss of voice. So finding safe spaces such as this to really be able to share your experience and to talk about how you're feeling is so empowering. And it really can help us move forward and move through what we are feeling because we aren't holding it all in. We also talked last week about this loss, this feeling of a shift in our identity in postpartum, where really, truly, we have shifted our role of, who I am, and now I have this other, this child that is fully dependent on me, and how that really shapes the way we view ourselves and our role and who we are, and really this unbecoming and becoming process of how we fit into our life now and what that looks like. And we talked about really honoring and being able to mourn that loss if that's something you're experiencing, because to be able to have that space to hold that is so important instead of just trying to dismiss those feelings. They're so normal. We all go through some version of this shift in identity, and how we navigate through that is important, and it needs to be validated and to be supported. We also talked last week about this loss of community that we can experience in postpartum, and how all of these losses are very much connected, and they really can feed into one another, impact one another. And especially this feeling of this loss of identity, this loss of voice, can really feed into our feelings of loss of community. And our community is really this tighter knit that surrounds us, our family, our friends. And they may be there supporting us physically or from afar, but sometimes there's this feeling of not being able to show up the same way around these same people, right? So a good example we gave last week was the shift in self. If you're the one of the first of your friend group to become a parent, that is a huge shift in identity and how you interact within that friend group, right? It can feel like this loss of community in a way where you're going through something and experiencing something that no one else within that circle can really relate to, right? And so it just feels like they just don't get it. They want to be there for you. They may be supportive in other ways, but they can't connect in this way of being able to see and hear and validate your experiences in the same way that they perhaps did before in other circumstances. So those were the three losses we covered last week: loss of self, loss of voice, and loss of community. And this week we're kicking back off again today with loss of world. And this is very much related again to our loss of community and loss of self and all the things we've already talked about from last week. But instead of this like tighter, closer knit community, we're talking about a little bit of a wider view. Our world and how we connect to that outside world really shifts dramatically in the postpartum time frame. And this happens no matter how many times we've gone through the postpartum experience. And the same can be said about all these other losses too. It doesn't matter how many times you have birthed and gone through a postpartum experience. You can still have some or all of these feelings of loss come up for you in each unique postpartum experience. And there's more things that feed into that too, right? Each time there's different changes and different ways that our family dynamic is shifting, and all these things that kind of change. And so when we're talking about this loss of world, we're really talking about how we see ourselves fit into our larger community, and just where we fit into the world and how we connect to that outside world can really feel like a loss in the postpartum time frame, because really we have this shrinking experience that happens. We are so tied to home because of baby and just the physical demands it takes to go anywhere with a baby and an infant can make it very difficult for us to really leave the home as easily as we did before, right? And so we can experience that sense of loss of world in that way, where it's just difficult for us to get out and experience the world outside of our home because of that. And then this is especially prevalent, we've talked about this last week as well, where how these losses can be really amplified in the time in which we are experiencing postpartum during a global pandemic, right? And so the shrinking of our world already kind of started happening prior to postpartum even, where the world outside, we're being advised as pregnant people, as postpartum people, to really try to avoid public places, and really try to, for good reason, right? There's concern around our health and our wellness with what's going on. But that can add this extra layer of loss where when we feel isolated and we feel like we're alone in our house and we just want to be able to go and connect out into that world, it's even harder at this point for us to do that. And so we can really experience that loss of world and that connection to the world in that way as well. And I think that this happens, just like I said, very naturally, very normally for so many of us in the postpartum time frame. I just am looking at my notes here to make sure I didn't skip over a key point. Oh yes, so this is a really good one too. So this feeling of loss of world, in again, when I was kind of saying how it's more difficult for us to pick up and go with baby, it's even difficult for us to pick up and go without baby as well, right? So some of the things in which we did before, like going to get our hair done, or if you went and got your nails done before, all of these kind of things where we were out connecting with the outside world when we only had, perhaps ourselves to worry about, or older children that were a little bit more easy to leave with a caregiver, those kind of things. That shifts with the newborn, right? And with the younger babies. It's so much more difficult for us to be physically away from a baby, especially if we are choosing to chest or breastfeed, right? There's a lot to go into that. Are we going to introduce a bottle? Is there somebody who, feels comfortable with knowing how we wish to feed our child with a bottle? Can we even do that right now? Does baby even take a bottle right now? All these things that we have to think about. And so we have to try to plan within these structures of time and these time limits. And then do you even have access to childcare, right? You have to make these arrangements outside of yourself to be able to go out and do these things. And so that can really add to that feeling, that loss of self, that autonomy that can really be felt in the postpartum time frame, as well as that connection to that loss of connection to the world that we can feel. And there's, just like I said, this overall shrinking of experience and connection to the world around us. And it can be very difficult to navigate that change. And so your world really becomes your home, right? And the spaces in which you live. And it's important to understand that that leads into this feeling of those experiences not being witnessed or seen, because it's become such a smaller, more intimate area in which we are interacting. And so that really leads us to this feeling of not being seen, heard about our experiences, right? And that can kind of weigh in on us as well. So what can we do to kind of help honor this experience and also help us try to tie those connections to the outside world back to us during the postpartum time frame? How can we try to plan for that ahead of time? If you're currently pregnant and you're looking to plan for your postpartum time, how can you plan for that ahead and try to build that into your knowledge base and to know that this is an experience that can happen, and what can I do to help mitigate some of the impacts from this feeling of loss of world? And some of the things I wanted to share with you are just a tidbit of what I do with my clients when we are doing the emotional support planning and the postpartum support planning, is just a couple really key questions that can help you kind of reflect on how you can help support yourself through this experience. And one of the first questions that we start out with when we're talking about this is, how can I, before I gave birth, how did I feel connected to the world around me? And this can be different for everyone. So that's why it's so important for us to think about, how did I feel connected prior to this birth? So what activities did you like to do? Did you like to go to the movies? Did you like to certain, walks that you went on in parks around where you live? Were there certain, stores that you enjoyed going to? Those kind of things. The things that really brought you joy in connection to outside of your home. So once you kind of think about that and you get a good list going, what are some ways that you can now still engage with that world, those pieces of the world, and bring into my postpartum time frame? Some of those pieces won't be able to fit into your postpartum time frame right away. And that's okay. And it's okay to be sad about that and to mourn some of that as well. But there are pieces that you could theoretically be able to fit in, and being able to identify those. And then you can move into the next question, which really is, what will I need to support me in getting the time and space for that connection to the outside world, right? Who can I ask for help? When is your partner home? Looking at their schedule. When can you fit in something of one of these activities where it would make sense for you to be able to do that? Is there things that you are able to bring baby along with you to have that sense of connection? All of these questions are really good for you to kind of think about these things and to be able to plan for them ahead of time and identify who can support you in making that happen. And then one of my other favorite questions that I like to have my clients reflect on is, how does it feel to be at home? And what can you bring into your home to help you continue to feel connected to the outside world, especially during those early parts of postpartum when it is difficult to actually get out? So really thinking about what could I bring into my home space to help me still feel that connection to the outside world? And really getting curious around that and thinking about that and journaling about it and writing it down so you can have a list to go back to look at when you're having those moments of feeling that disconnection. Is there somebody you can reach out to so that you have that feeling of being connected to the outside world again? Whether that be on FaceTime, a phone call, something along those lines. Is there music that you love to connect to that would help you feel that sense of connection to the outside world? Perhaps you loved to travel prior to birth. Are there some photographs that you can bring into your nurturing space that you can look at that gives you that sense of that connection to that place and that time that you really had a lot of joy and you felt like you were able to explore the world around you? Those are some really good tips to start thinking about ways of bringing in the outside world to your home space to be able to make that feel like you have that connection piece still to the outside world. So those are some of my favorite things that I have my clients work on and really think about and be really curious and reflective about that so that you can have a really good list and some tangible things that you can reach for when you're feeling that disconnect from the outside world and be able to pull that back in. And then, of course, I want you to take the time that you need to hold what you need to hold, because sometimes there's just going to be limits to what we're able to do when we feel that disconnection from the outside world, when we have a brand new baby at home, and when you're healing yourself personally, right? Because we can't forget about your own healing journey in all of this. And sometimes there's just going to be those limitations to what we can do. And holding space for that and mourning that if necessary for you is so important, because that's when we are able to actually move forward, when we feel what we need to feel. All right. I don't think I had any questions come through. I saw a few people popping on and off live. So hello, if you are here. I'm so happy you were able to pop in for a few minutes. This is going to be available up for replays for those who weren't able to make it live. And we will be back again tomorrow night for the loss of time. And then Wednesday will be our final day, and we will be talking about the loss of control and kind of doing a recap excuse me, of everything that we had talked about up to this point. And so we're really going to dive into that, and I'll have some time for some Q&A as well, a space to share experiences, questions, those kind of things that we want to discuss around this whole sense of the 6 losses of postpartum, and really the piece about building that emotional resiliency so that we can help really just be able to process what is happening during this postpartum time frame and be able to really see the strengths in this amazing and transformative time in our lives. And of course, if you are looking for some one-on-one support, feel free to schedule some time with me at the link that I posted in the description above. That's a calendar link where you can find some time with me for a 45-minute clarity call where we'll sit down and we'll talk about where you are in your postpartum. We'll talk about some of the things that you're struggling with and maybe some of these losses that you're going through and that you're feeling. Or if you're pregnant, we can talk about how we can start planning for your postpartum time frame and really making sure that you have a solid, holistic plan where you can feel comfortable and confident and empowered when you move in to your postpartum time frame. And what I love about being able to work with folks in pregnancy as well is we can do birth planning together. I offer birth planning and postpartum planning to my pregnant clients. So that is something that we can work through together so that you have a really solid holistic birth plan and postpartum plan that work really well together. And so we'll talk about what it would look like working together and how we can help you fill in some of those gaps and those struggles that you're going through. And we can see if it would be a good fit energetically as far as a coaching partnership. And you'd have my support for 6 full months. We meet every other week, and that's over like a video platform, but then you have access to me through a secure messenger as often as you want. That is unlimited, which is where a lot of coaching goes down. Just because it is so convenient to be able to shoot me a message in the moment and to be able to get that support when you need it as well. So feel free to schedule some time with me at that link. I'd love to chat with you to see if this would be a great fit. And I am looking forward to our continued discussion tomorrow for the loss of time we're going to be talking about. And if you need to watch the replays of the other videos in the series, look back at the post that I did 2 days ago, it has all the links, so you can find everything that you need for the videos right there. When this is done, I will put out another post that has all of them in one post, so that you can go back and access that at a later point as well, if you need to review it and get this information again at another time. So otherwise, I will leave you to the rest of your Monday evening. I don't have any questions in the chat, but if you're watching this at the replay, feel free to drop those with a hashtag replay, and I'd love to engage with you in the comments once this is up and loaded into the group. All right, everybody, I will see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. again, Mountain Standard Time here in the group for the loss of time, and I will see you then.